Hey, I'm Daquan Hall. Thanks for coming to this video. And this is going to be a real quick tutorial on how to build your systems and processes and develop your SOPs. So let's just jump right in. Systems versus processes. So a system is a set of steps that are designed to help you complete a task. They usually have one output that goes to the next part of the system or the end customer, depending on what part of the system it is. So systems are made up of processes. So the process fills the system in, and the system starts at whenever we get product or whenever we get a new customer or however the system gets going, and it moves all the way through until we either return something to the end customer or we've created a product that we sell to the end customer. However that works in your business, if you're a retailer, that's going to be when a customer walks in the door, the system starts, and then when they check out, the system ends, right? So it all depends on how your business works. Okay, the model that we're going to use comes directly from Lean Six Sigma. It's called SIPOC, and it stands for Supplier Inputs, Process Outputs, and Customer or Consumer. So, and here's a quick diagram. The slides will be linked, and also you'll have access to this video whenever you want, so you can always come back and look at this diagram. Okay. So the supplier in the process is the person or the vendor that provides whatever inputs we need to the process. Okay, so you can think of that as either your vendor who brings in, if you have a bakery like the example, that'll be somebody who delivers flour. If you make cakes, that'll be the person that brings eggs, right? So you need the vendor, you need these inputs in order to start the process. So, like I just said, the inputs are the things that go into the process. So don't just think of the things like flour and eggs to bake a cake. You also need whisk inputs to the process. Oh, and you need employees, staff, a team member, right? Somebody, or maybe even a recipe book if you are, in fact, in a bakery. If you're in a retail store, that means you're going to need your team member. You need the particular product the customer wants. I have one client who had to create a book so that they could actually have a pricing book for bulk items. Bulk items are items that are sold loosely, if you don't know. So they needed a pricing book for the bulk items. So there were a bunch of different inputs that went into the process, and each process, right, had its own set of different inputs. So the process that's taken that transforms the inputs into outputs. So in a retail store, you can think of that as when a customer walks in the door, the process starts, right? We gather all the inputs that the customer needs, and then the process to turning them into a customer is between helping them, the actual customer service process, and then the checkout process. In a bakery, that's actually mixing the ingredients and baking the cake. So what you want to do and then write down all of your step-by-step instructions. Now here's the key to developing your processes for SOPs. You have to think like a toddler. How would you explain to a toddler how to do anything, right? Even explaining to a toddler how to brush your teeth is something that you have to really break down and think about all the steps. The thing that I find that people normally get stuck on with who doesn't know. Therefore, you tend to fast forward through some steps because they're just common knowledge to you. There's things you don't even have to think about anymore. However, when you want to hire a staff member, you want to bring somebody in who may not be an expert to work with you, well, then you have to break that process down so simply that anybody can do it. The more difficult, the less steps you put in there, the less you break it down, the more difficult the task becomes, the less clarity there is, and the more you will actually need to pay someone, or the more they'll feel like they should be paid to do the job. The more steps you put in, the simpler you make the task, and therefore the less someone will feel. So it also increases your customer experience because your processes will make sure that the same level of care, the same level of quality, and the same level of service is put into every single iteration of the process. So this is the part where you really got to dig in break down those steps and get a lot of clarity inside of your SOPs so that your employees can produce at the same level and at the same quality that you can. This is also the area where you can learn to eliminate steps that make it more difficult to complete the task. Now, you may be used to doing these things, so the difficulty in them becomes very low to you because you're so used to doing them, because you've been doing it so long. But for someone who hasn't been doing it as long as you, for someone who doesn't understand it as well as you, this task may be monumental, and therefore, if you don't figure out a way to either remove that step or make it much simpler, it's going to cause you a lot of headaches as you have a lot of people come to you and try to figure out what to do, right? And the last thing I'll say about this is you also want to make sure you eliminate ambiguity. Ambiguity is what causes confusion. And then that's what has you having to run around all day and manage your staff like crazy because you got to put out fires and answer a bunch of questions. The less ambiguity it is, meaning the more clear it is, the more clarity you have, right? And to even get even more granular, it's the difference between saying, go get item number 101 from the 101 from in XYZ location, right? The more specificity means the less ambiguity and therefore more clarity and therefore less headaches for you. So, as I said, the process turns the inputs into outputs. The output is the finished product of the process, right? Now, that finished product can be, in my business as a consultant, that means it's a report generally, right? Or it's a improved system or improved process or an improved whatever else we're optimizing for in that client's business. In a bakery, a mixed bag of mixed dry ingredients could be one process, and the outputs are that one process. Now, here's why, because the customer of a process is not always the end customer, the customer who actually buys the product. Sometimes the customer of a process is the next user in the process, the next worker down the line. So if you're will prepare a meal and puts it under a hot lamp, that's only one part of the process. Before the food gets to the end customer, which is the person that's actually going to eat the food, it has to be transferred from the kitchen to the table by a waiter or a waitress. That's another part of the process. But in that, in that food that's cooked now has to be transported to the end customer. Okay. Now, when you create your SOPs, you're going to want to write down every single step in every single process exhaustively. You want to leave nothing out, right? Because what you want to be able to do is hand this to some other human being who has no idea how your business works, and they can read this and then therefore run your entire business. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not because you're so special and nobody else can do it. It's because the only way you're going to be able to scale your business past a certain point is if you can do that. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time managing everything that happens, and it's going to wear you out. It's going to burn you out. So the more clarity you can add, the more specificity you add, and I know I keep going over this over and over again, but it's that important. The more you can do that, the easier you make your own life as the leader of your company. And it also leads to faster growth, faster scale, and more efficient growth and scale, which means you spend less money and therefore you have more profit. Okay? So the last thing I'll add to this is that you want to have metrics and you want to have data. All of this stuff is going to give you a ton of data. You want to keep these metrics because that will allow you to understand the process. As your company grows, you don't have time to dig into every single process. If you have a restaurant, let's say you get 5 restaurants, you don't have time to sit down and go to every single restaurant and go over every single process and try to figure out everything that's going wrong all the time. However, if you have data, you can look at the data, and the data will give you a target and say, okay, well, here's where we see that there's a bottleneck based on the data. And now you can go in there with a scalpel, right? As opposed to trying to dig through everything and figure out what's going on with that one location, or if it's several locations, the data will tell you, oh no, it's not the whole location. It's the time between the reason we're getting a bad customer review, so many bad customer reviews, is because the time between when the food is prepared and put under the heat lamp and then transferred to the customer is too long. We need to reduce that, right? The data gives you targeting. The data gives you a place to look to solve the problem, okay? So you're gonna wanna start recording data on every single step in the process as much as you can. You won't be able to do every single one, but as much as you absolutely can in order to, make scaling your business easier. It's another thing that takes a lot of pressure off of you and eliminates some headache. So with that said, if you want some help trying to figure out what that next version of your business looks like, what those processes should look like, and how you do them in the most efficient way, okay? You're gonna go to the form below this video, right? And you're gonna sign up for a free 100K growth plan. By signing up for this plan, I will not only help you with your processes, right? Help you figure out your processes. We won't just talk about that. We'll also talk about how we can help you add $100,000, at least a minimum of 6 figures, to your budget so that you can use it for growth, or you can put it in your pocket, or you can pay back your investors if you have any, whatever you choose to do. Right? So we're going to go through that whole process, and we'll also have a strategy that I call the happiness budget that we'll do. We'll walk through what you need to do to create happiness for yourself and your family and your business. It's really about creating your own version of what your life should look like 5 years from now. And we'll do that process, and then we'll discuss how you structure your business and your strategy so that you can attain that level of happiness financially in your business. Okay, if that sounds good to you, go to that form, fill it in, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.